In this video, we're going to take a look at a purple ink by Noodler's Concord Grape. Now, as always, there's timestamps down below so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. Also down in the description is a link to the purple ink playlist, so if you wanted to see more, you can find that there. I'm an ink guy, and let's get into the first writing sample done on 90 GSM Clairfontaine. No bleeding, but we are getting some very minor ghosting. We have no feather, no spread, no shading, no tone variation at all. This is absolutely consistent in its performance. The extra fine took 12 seconds to dry, while the medium took 19. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. There's none in the writing, and the smear test you could definitely recover if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then an Airmail Regal was inked up, used for a day, and used to take the notes for this video. The next writing sample is done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. No bleeding, but a lot of ghosting. We have no feather, no spread, we have no shading within the writing, but we do have tone variation. The extra fine looks a tad lighter than the stub, and the medium certainly looks darker than the stub. Extra fine took 20 seconds to dry, while the medium took 31. The scrubby for both give no color variation, we get none in the writing, and the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down, and then it's immediately put in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see that this ink actually doesn't travel very far up, but it's a little more interesting than I was expecting. There's a lot of this very dark purple at the bottom, but as it pushes up, we get a very light pink all the way at the very top of it. Now, the one on the right that's allowed to dry for 10 minutes, most of that purple really stayed in that line. It bonded in only 10 minutes. Not a lot of the purple is even pushing up, but then that pink is up there, showing that the pink's going to move, but that purple is going to be a very resistant color. The next writing sample is done on 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. No bleeding, minor ghosting, no feather, no spread, no tone variation. Again, this is a super consistent performer. The extra fine took 15 seconds to dry. The medium took 23. The scrubby for both give no color variation. There's none in the writing. And the smear test you could definitely recover if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink could be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, this is an exceptional ink to use in a note-taking situation because it has no effect on it, which we really expected from the chromatography and shows itself to be completely true where the water tested it because it didn't budge. Pen flush only started to break up the tiniest bit. A majority of it is still there. Now, the 1/3 bleach solution is really starting to break it down. You still see some of the discoloration on the page. I used the Regal because that way I didn't have to worry about using the 1/3 bleach solution to get it entirely out of the pen, which I did have to use to get it entirely out of that pen. The next writing sample is done on yellow Rhodia paper. We do this as usual, not to see performance change, but really to see tone variations that go on. Now, this is a very blue-leaning purple on the white paper, and it's funny because we do see a little bit more of the purple tone on the yellow paper. It is a slight shift where if we just look at the medium, it's a little more blue-leaning on the white, a little more purple-leaning on the yellow. Now, I think not so much that the ink itself is translucent. I really believe this is more to do with how the eye is perceiving the color. For the inks tested, the average viscosity was 2.5, with a realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Noodler's Concord Grape has a viscosity of 2.41, making it normal. The next writing sample is done on G. Lalo paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. We have no feather, No spread, no shading, but we do get tone variation. The extra fine is a little bit lighter than the medium and the stub, while the medium and stub are the same tone. The extra fine only took 8 seconds to dry. The medium, only 13. Scrubby for both, give no color variation. We get no shading in the writing. And the smear test, I do not think you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average dry time was 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Noodler's Concord Grape has an average dry time of 20 seconds, making it normal. The last writing sample is not something you would use so much for writing, but more for art. Canson Bristol. No bleeding, no ghosting. I would be very shocked if an ink ever could bleed or ghost through it. Now we get no feather, no spread. We get some shading that actually shows up in the extra fine. We do see some lighter spots of shading in the medium, even a few really dark spots like the X in Fox or K in Quick. Quite interesting. The extra fine is lighter than the medium. The medium is about the same tone as the stub. Even the stub is showing a little bit of shading. When you look at the word grape, it starts darker, goes to a nice mid-tone to a very dark tone again. The extra fine took only 5 seconds to dry, while the medium took 8. The scrubby for both aren't showing any color variation, but we definitely do see some of the shading happening in the writing. And the smear test you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. Instead of finding inks that look like Noodler's Concord Grape, I'd prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went with a nice brown ink by Colorverse, their Hubble Zoom. Now, if you'd prefer a different complement color, then down in the description are links to those playlists. So what do I think of Noodler's Concord Grape? A dark purple, nowhere near dark enough to lose its purpleness. There's no shading or tone variation. It's completely predictable as an ink in what you're going to get. If you're worried about staining your pens, then don't put the Baystate line from Noodler's in a pen. If you're worrying about staining. I know that people like to bash these inks. If you're that worried, just don't use them. So what nib and pen will give the best writing experience with this ink? I really do think it's so consistently performing that it doesn't matter what pen you put it into in the performance that you're going to get. Just choose a pen that you're willing to be a little bit more extensive in your cleaning with. I hope you got something out of this video, and in the next video, we're going to take a look at Pilot's Mixable Green.